the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And this episode is another Duel episode, this time between Hector Hammond, the Green Lantern villain, and Modok, the leader of AIM, who currently has his own Hulu TV show going.
Yeah, both of these guys are villains who are pretty much just heads. They have massive brains with psychic powers. We're going to pit them up against each other and find out who would win by running their stats in a series of 1,000 simulations. I'm really excited about this episode. I think Modok is one of the bigger villains that we haven't done a duel with yet. Of course, this episode is sponsored by the Hulu Modok television series, so if you haven't watched that yet because you don't know anything about the character, this is a great episode to learn all about Modok.
Before we break down Modok and Hector Hammond and run the simulations, we're going to discuss the comic book movie news items that came out this past week, including the Eternals official teaser trailer, the news that Aaron Taylor Johnson was cast as Kraven, and the reveal of the supporting cast for Netflix's Sandman series.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through. As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. Now guys, we've been doing a big Patreon push this past month. We're trying to get to 100 patrons by the middle of July when the Black Widow movie comes out. And we're pushing this because both Apple Podcasts and Spotify have provided this show a way to make money by having people subscribe to the show, putting it behind a paywall. We don't want to do that, but we are hoping to recompensate that value by directing people to Patreon where they can get access to a lot of bonus perks.
Yeah, we want to keep the show free. So if you subscribe to us on Patreon, for $2 a month you get bonus content, including watch parties via Scener starting this month.
And for $10 a month, you get a Marvel vs. DC pin set every other month. This month, starting in June, we're going to be sending out Red Hood vs. Punisher pins to all of our $10 and $18 tier patrons. If you're not a patron within the month of June, you're not going to get the Punisher vs. Red Hood pin set. So be sure you sign up before the end of June.
Yeah, for either the $10 tier or the $18 tier at the highest level, in which you get a pin set every month, as well as executive producer status of this podcast and help us determine content.
Yeah, we've gotten a few new patrons over the past week. We want to give a huge shout out to Dustin Balcom, Clayton D'Amato, and Jose M. Thank you guys so much for supporting this show. We are currently at 40 patrons, guys. At 50 patrons, Jonathan and I will be releasing a bonus episode of this podcast where we count down the top 10 of a Marvel and DC topic. So if you guys want a bonus episode of this show every month, again, sign up for Patreon. Even the $2 a month tier members get that bonus episode.
And just a reminder, no matter what happens by the time we reach the middle of July, if you're a patron, you still have access to this show.
Visit patreon.com/dynamicduel, sign up for one of our tiers, and help keep this show free. But with that out of the way,
quick to the no prize.
A no prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on social media that Jonathan draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question, we asked, in what ways do you think the merger of Warner Media and Discovery will help or hinder DC Comics and their films? And that was coming off the news of that merger. It was a complicated question, I think. We only got 2 answers total,
right?
So I'm not sure a lot of you knew what to think about the merger or if it was just a poorly worded question. Regardless, we do have an honorable mention and a winner.
This week's honorable mention goes to Jose M., who said,
"Hey guys, Jose, aka Joe here, but I'm on the DC side. I think the merger is going to be great because it'll give somebody with experience a chance to be in charge, just as long as there's no more Kevin Sugiharas, who was responsible for that Justice League. He pushed that so hard just so he could get a bonus. That's all I have to say."
Yeah, Kevin Sugihara sucked.
Yeah, and it was revealed he did push Justice League just to get a bonus before the AT&T merger. And considering all the other news we got about him, it's not a good look. I'm not surprised that AT&T ended up firing him.
Yeah, he was definitely the source of a lot of drama behind the scenes. I have much more faith in David Zaslav, who's the current head of Discovery and will head up this new company. As we mentioned last week, he has a ton of experience in content creation, being a former studio exec for Universal Studios, and catapulting Discovery to its current status.
I keep hearing that Discovery Plus is pretty awesome. It seems to be a huge success, and I hope he rolls that forward into this new company.
Thank you very much, Jose M., for reaching out to us and taking your time to leave us an answer.
But the winner of this week's No Prize goes to Miggy Manning Yin, who said,
Hey guys, this is Miggy, and I think the merger will mean a lot more DC content in the upcoming years with new TV shows and especially films. I know Discovery doesn't have a lot of movies, and I think they'll want to try to break into that industry. I hope they leave the comics alone and not try to make fast money like with the 5G initiative or Future State. But most of all, I hope that King Shark hosts Shark Week.
I mean, I'm giving him the win just alone for the King Shark hosting Shark Week. That needs to happen.
Or Aquaman.
Yeah, totally. Why not? I also like Miggy's response in regards to the actual comics company, which will also be owned by Discovery. DC has had so many reboots lately, whether it's, the New 52 or Rebirth. The last thing the company needs is another cash grab and another reboot. I imagine Discovery's focus will be on video content since that's what they produce. So yeah, let the comics guys, like Jim Lee, handle the comics.
Congrats again to Miggy Madangian for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, this past week we got the first teaser for the Eternals movie. I was not expecting this. It kind of came out of the blue for me. I didn't even know it was up until later on that day that it came out. And I was kind of blindsided by it. But when I finally watched it, I don't know, it was very much a tease. It didn't reveal nearly as much as a trailer would have, but it did pique my interest, which is what a teaser should do. I've been very compelled by what this movie is going to be like. Considering the talent behind the scenes, Chloe Zhao, who was last year's Academy Award-winning director, the stellar cast, including Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, and the concept of the film being praised by Disney execs, including Kevin Feige, who said that this could be a Best Picture contender in the same vein as Black Panther. So with so much hype, yeah, maybe I didn't really check my expectations going in because I was expecting something mind-blowing. And what we got here was just a little sampler, just a little teaser.
It's kind of hard to check your expectations when we really don't have any, I think a majority of fans, because it's not like the Eternals are a really big property.
Yeah.
And even after watching this, I'm not exactly sure what my expectations should be. It definitely looks beautiful. The cinematography looks great. And you're right, I love the cast. I am definitely intrigued.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I feel mostly about this movie the way I did before I even watched this teaser, albeit marginally more interested. The trailer starts off where we visit Early Man. The Eternals come in their spaceship, and they decide that they're going to help shape mankind.
Yeah, it's almost like 2001: A Space Odyssey in a way. They kind of kickstart mankind's evolution by handing them a tool.
Right, exactly. Now, this type of manipulation is very much something that the Celestials did within the comics. It's almost like the Eternals are taking on the role of the Celestials. Now, if you guys have listened to our Thanos versus Darkseid episode, you guys know the history of the Eternals. Basically, they were the result of these experiments by these cosmic beings known as Celestials who visited Earth during mankind's early days. They created the godlike beings known as the Eternals, and they also turned humans into these demon-like creatures known as Deviants, who are the enemies of the Eternals. And finally, the Celestials also implanted the seeds of mutation into mankind's genetic code. From there, the Eternals left Earth to go to the planet Titan, which is the same planet that Thanos is from. Thanos is essentially a mutant Eternal.
And we saw Titan in Infinity War.
Right. Presumably, these Eternals are coming from that planet. But anyway, it wasn't the Eternals that helped shape mankind, it was the Celestials. And we know the Celestials will be playing a part within this movie because we've seen the concept art. So maybe the Eternals don't have their early roots within mankind on Earth, or maybe it's going to be like a big twist within the movie where the Eternals themselves realize that even though they're godlike beings, they're still actually from this planet that they're manipulating.
It's all kind of confusing. I'm not sure how close it will be to the comics, but I guess we'll know by the end of this year.
We did get to see some of the Eternals use their powers, like when Cersei touched the ground and she caused water to come up from the ground. Cersei is an Eternal whose primary talent is the power of elemental transmutation. So she can turn things like lead into gold.
Or soil into water.
Exactly. I think people are going to have a really hard time accepting the fact that the Eternals chose not to interfere directly with mankind even despite all the horrible things that have happened within the MCU's history.
That was my biggest question.
Yeah.
Like, where were they when Loki appeared and the Chitauri? Where were they when Ultron invaded Sokovia? When Thanos, snapped half of the universe's population out of existence?
And that's a great question. Salma Hayek's Ajax says that they've never interfered until now. And I'm wondering if maybe the blip, Thanos' snap, was the catalyst that compels them to finally act as heroes.
That would almost mean that nearly all of them would have had to have disappeared during the blip. Maybe.
I'm sure some of them did. And they're probably like, oh shit, maybe we should step up to make sure that a blip level event doesn't happen again. That's what I'm assuming. Hopefully they explain that well enough, because I think a lot of people are questioning that.
I did think it was really cool how whenever they used their powers, there was like this gold celestial kind of language, almost like writing system that would be generated.
Yeah, that was really cool. The story does seem to center primarily on the relationship between Cersei, played by Gemma Chan, and Icarus, who's played by Richard Madden.
And Kevin Feige has said that Gemma Chan is the lead protagonist of the film.
Yeah, there's an interesting shot where we see her in the past, and then it cuts to a similar shot within the present.
And we get to see her with Kit Harington, the guy who's going to be playing Black Knight, apparently.
Yeah, Dane Whitman. It does seem like there's going to be some kind of love triangle between Cersei, Dane Whitman, and Icarus. Which is funny because, Richard Madden and Kit Harington played brothers in the Game of Thrones television series. But we only get a quick shot of Dane Whitman. I think Kit Harington is perfectly cast in that role, though. I can't wait to see the Black Knight in action. I hope we get to see a lot of him and that he joins the Avengers. The end shot is all the Eternals standing side by side. I assume that they're facing down the Celestials at this point or communicating with them. Who knows?
Yeah, we really don't know who the main villain of this story is. It could be one of the Eternals.
Yeah, Barry Keoghan's character, Druig, does seem to be rather sinister. He's the mind reader of the Eternals. I wouldn't count out a deception by him. We'll see what happens there. But otherwise, the teaser is just so quickly shot, so there's not a whole lot to speculate on. But overall, I would describe it as epic, as romantic.
Atmospheric.
Atmospheric, definitely. Historic. A lot of ick words.
Yeah.
Which is not, a bad thing. It wasn't like the eye-popping, wow, visual I was perhaps expecting. I wasn't blown away by this trailer. A lot of people weren't. I think a lot of people had mixed feelings about this. And that brings us to our question of the week.
Are you more or less excited for Eternals since its teaser trailer, and why?
Yeah, we want to get your guys' thoughts. Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Be sure to answer before June 6th. In another bit of surprising news this past week, we learned that Aaron Taylor Johnson will be playing Kraven the Hunter in the Sony spin-off film.
And it's like, what?
Yeah, my first big reaction was,
Quicksilver?
Yeah, Quicksilver is like a scrawny guy. I always thought of Kraven the Hunter as being this ripped dude who looks like he would be able to kill a lion with his bare hands. I never really got that vibe from Aaron Taylor Johnson. Apparently, Sony execs were convinced that he was the right man for the role after watching dailies from the upcoming film called Bullet Train. Apparently, Aaron Taylor Johnson just kicks ass in that movie. But the fact that Sony is trying to intertwine their Spider-Man part of the universe with the MCU, this whole thing doesn't make sense to me because Aaron Taylor Johnson was in the MCU. So how can you have Kraven potentially part of the MCU when he looks exactly like Quicksilver?
I can't wait to see Scarlet Witch see Kraven. She's going to be like, what?
Yeah, she's going to be like, oh no, it's another Ralph Boner situation. You think that they would have cast an actor that had no ties whatsoever to the existing MCU if their plan was indeed to try to connect the Sony universe to that. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe we won't be seeing Spider-Man involved in any way, shape, or form with Morbius or Venom or now Kraven. And that's disappointing.
This does, however, kind of lend to the rumor that some of the villain films in the Sony Spider-Verse exist in a different universe altogether as part of the multiverse.
Right. Yeah, the multiverse is a great way to rationalize this casting.
But I agree with you. I've seen Aaron Taylor Johnson in Kick-Ass, and that guy's pretty scrawny. He's going to have to do some major steroids to bulk up for this role.
Yeah, he'll have to get huge. Now, when the Kraven movie was first announced, we asked you guys as a question of the week who you would cast as Kraven the Hunter. And I can't remember which answer won. I think maybe it was Gerard Butler
or Luke Evans.
Or Luke Evans or Joe Manganiello or something like that. I think all three of those guys would have rocked this role. Considering it wasn't any of them is a little bit disappointing. That being said, I do like Aaron Taylor Johnson as an actor. And if Sony trusts him based off of what they've seen, I'm not inclined to disagree with them.
It is kind of heartbreaking, though, if this means that we'll never see Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver again. But I guess if they were going to bring him back, they would have done it in WandaVision, and they didn't.
I mean, like I said in our review of WandaVision, it made no sense to cast Evan Peters in that role if the whole thing was just a setup for a gag, because Agatha Harkness had the ability to make anything look like whatever she wanted, like she did with that fly. So she could have had Ralph Bohner look like Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver.
The whole thing still pisses me off. That was so dumb.
Yeah. Quicksilver just can't cut a break, man. I don't know what it is. But here's hoping that, they have a great script for the movie. I've never seen any of the directors J.C. Chandor's work. I do want to check out Triple Frontier because I heard that was really good.
I've seen that. It's great.
And it has a great cast, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's hoping. Aaron Taylor Johnson is certainly not a bad choice and definitely has the potential to be great in this role.
Yeah, I mean, we've already heard his Russian accent in Age of Ultron, so we know he could do that.
That's true. The movie is not scheduled to come out until January of 2023, so we'll probably not get our first look via a trailer or anything like that until summer of next year at the earliest.
In DC news, the supporting cast for Netflix's The Sandman series was revealed this past week. We already know that Tom Sturridge will be playing Sandman, aka Dream, which, perfect casting. The guy totally looks like him. We've talked about this before on the show. Also in the main cast is Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer.
That's great.
And Boyd Holbrook as Corinthian, just to name a few.
Yeah, so good.
Now we learn that Kirby Howell-Baptiste will be Death, one of the Endless Dream's sister.
I don't know who that actress is.
I don't know either. She's been in a few sitcoms, as long as she matches, the bubbly personality of Death. It's so counterintuitive to what you expect a character named Death to behave like, and that's what's great about it. We also learned that Mason Alexander Park will be playing Desire, which is another one of Dream's siblings.
I don't know who that is either.
Yeah, I'm also not familiar with their work, but Desire is a huge part of the Sandman story, and I'm really glad that they got them in there. Donna Preston is Desire's twin sister, Despair.
Still don't know her.
Jenna Coleman has been cast as Johanna Constantine. I think most people thought that this was a gender-bent role, but actually both John Constantine and Johanna Constantine, his ancestor, appear in the Sandman comics. She's described in the casting as a haunted exorcist and occult adventuress for hire. David Thewlis, who played Ares in the Wonder Woman film, will be playing John Dee in the Sandman series, aka Dr. Destiny. So he gets to play like two DC villains. I don't know if that's allowed. Apparently they're running with it.
Different universes.
But other big names include Stephen Fry, who will be playing Gilbert, and Patton Oswalt, who will be playing Matthew the Raven, who's like Dream's assistant.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear Modok's voice coming out of this Raven.
Overall, the cast looks like it's going to be on point, just along with the other casting that they announced earlier. I can't believe that all of these characters will be in the show. It looks like they're covering so much ground of the story. It's going to be fantastic, and I can't wait for it.
But I think that does it for all the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and get into our main event, where we find out who would win in a fight between the Green Lantern villain, Hector Hammond, and the leader of the evil organization AIM, Modok.
Okay, Hector Hammond versus Modok. When we knew that the Modok show was going to be released this year, we definitely wanted to get a Modok duel in there. And when it came to finding a DC opponent for him, we kind of defaulted to the Amalgam universe set up by the DC versus Marvel comic series from the 90s, in which Modok was merged with Hector Hammond. They're sort of analogs for each other in the respective universes. Their character actually in the Amalgam universe was named Hector. It was an acronym for Highly Evolved Creature Totally Oriented on Revenge.
Yeah, it's fitting that they paired them up against each other because these characters are defined by their big brains, their heads being so big that their body can't support it, so they have to find other means of mobilization. This match is probably going to feature the world's biggest headbutt.
Or head testicle in the case of Hector Hammond.
Yeah, he definitely looked like a head testicle in the Green Lantern movie that came out in 2011 with Ryan Reynolds. But let's find out who has the bigger head by breaking down these characters.
If you've never listened to one of our Duel episodes before, the way we determine a winner between these two characters is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using their statistics. Now, a Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling.
And in our case, it randomizes statistics along a normal distribution, which is a bell curve, as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters we use are based on the official Marvel Power Grid, and we use that criteria to extrapolate the DC character stats. And we've included some additional stat categories of our own, such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception, in order to create a more complete and robust simulation.
Now, running these 1,000 simulations gives us a percentage of wins for each character, and we declare the one with the higher percentage to be the ultimate victor, considering they're more likely to win any given battle. No character ever wins 100% of the time. Comics have shown that there's always a way for Batman to defeat Superman, and we feel our method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the comic book stories.
And we use this method because it was the least subjective, most unbiased way to determine who would win. Of course, we're both heavily biased toward our respective allegiances, and instead of debating these matches forever, we just let the math decide for us. So there's no fan votes here, and no relying on just feats.
Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations we run would play out beat for beat. Now I know it's my turn to go first, so let me tell you all about Hector Hammond. So little is known about Hector Hammond's upbringing, other than he was, for a short time, a petty thief. In fact, desiring things that don't belong to him is a common theme among Hector's story. Brilliant by nature, Hector eventually became an astrophysicist who specialized in alternative fuel sources and theoretical future science. Due to his areas of expertise, he was brought on board as a consultant for Ferris Aircraft, at which point he developed an unhealthy obsession with Carol Ferris, the president of the aircraft manufacturer and the childhood friend and employer of the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, who you can learn more about in our Green Lantern vs. Nova episode. After a business dinner led Hector to believe Hal and Carol were dating, Hector became possessive over Carol after she and Hal began to show feelings for one another. By this point, Hal had been chosen as a Green Lantern for Space Sector 2814 after the death of the alien Abin Sur, his predecessor. Hector was also a consultant for the US Air Force, and was part of a small team that investigated and discovered Abin Sur's crashed spacecraft on Earth. While studying the vessel, Hector discovered an irradiated meteorite that served as the alien ship's fuel source. Exposing the meteorite from its container caused an explosion that bombarded Hector with an energy that evolved his brain, granting him psychic abilities and causing his head to swell. Able to hear how much of his colleagues hated him, he attacked them with his new mental powers. Making his way to Ferris Aircraft, he found Carol with Hal and attacked them both, learning in the process all of Hal's secrets of loving Carol, meeting aliens, and being a Green Lantern. Wanting Hal's power ring, Hector attempted to slam an aircraft into him, but was incapacitated by another Green Lantern, Sinestro, who you can learn more about in our Sinestro vs. Magneto episode. While knocked out, Hector was captured by the US military and placed in a neural barrier containment cell and analyzed. Eventually, Hector came to and realized that while the barrier prevented him from mentally communicating with others, he could still listen and experience the thoughts of those around him. He decided to study the minds of 4 scientists who observed him, believing he could use their collective knowledge to develop future technology that would impress Carol and get him back in her good graces. While being transferred to Belle prison, Hector was able to take mental control over the 4 scientists and planned his escape. Green Lantern helped oversee the transfer, and his ring was stolen by one of the scientists, who gave the ring to Hector. Hector attempted to use the ring, but due to a built-in failsafe against others using it, the ring backfired and knocked Hector unconscious for the rest of the transfer. Imprisoned in Belle Reve with a stronger neural barrier, Hector dedicated his time to expanding his mental power, tapping into areas of the brain never before accessed. Over time, Hector was successfully able to evolve his own mind even more, making himself immortal at the accidental cost of increasing his head size so much that his physical body could no longer support it, and he was rendered inert, incapable of moving or speaking. Trapped in his own body, Hector's enhanced psychic abilities allowed him to surpass his prison's neural barrier. He kept mental tabs on Green Lantern, able to track him all the way to the planet Oa, where Hector learned of the Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. By the time Green Lantern returned, Hector managed to break down his prison's mental barriers and psychically project, in Green Lantern's mind, an illusion of a Guardian that fought and nearly defeated Green Lantern, until the hero realized it was all an illusion from Hector. Still imprisoned and dreaming of gaining back his mobility, Hector mentally scanned the stars, searching for the source of the radioactive meteor so that he could use it to evolve the rest of his body, not just his mind. Eventually, he found a meteor of the same substance embedded within an asteroid, and Hector tricked Hal into exposing the meteor by telekinetically creating a rock monster from the asteroid that Hal fought and destroyed. Hector pulled the meteor to his prison cell, where its radiation made him superhuman, capable of walking, talking, flying, and even warping space-time. Hector met Hal out in space and the two fought. Hector ran Hal through the gamut and continuously turned Hal's energy constructs against him. Hector nearly overpowered Hal until the radiation Hector absorbed began to fade due to Hector burning through it so quickly. Imprisoned once again, Hector would later be visited by Green Lantern for help when a person in his city randomly evolved 50,000 years. Hector agreed to help in exchange for the memory of Hal having a good time with a woman. Green Lantern agreed, and though Hector fought to see more, he eventually revealed to Hal that he had discovered that an alien race known as the Kroliteans was responsible for the irradiated evolving meteors, and that they were back on Earth to check on their experiments. As Green Lantern left to investigate, Hector was abducted from his cell by the Kroliteans, who experimented on him in their ship. Green Lantern eventually found Hector, but was also captured and imprisoned. Green Lantern did escape and rescue Hector before returning him to his prison, but not before Hector managed to rifle through dozens of Hal's memories. During the Brightest Day event, Hector was freed from prison by Krona, a former guardian of the universe. Krona used Hector to track down the orange universal entity of avarice named Ophidian, who was currently trapped in the power battery of the sole orange lantern named Larfleeze. Hector found and attacked Larfleeze, managing to swallow his power battery and become possessed by Ophidian, in the same way that Hal Jordan was once possessed by the fear entity Parallax. Possessing immense power, Hector was able to defeat a cadre of lanterns from across the power spectrum, only to later be purged of Ophidian by Krona. Post-Flashpoint, Hector was abducted from his prison cell at Belle Reve once again by the terrorist organization Hive, or the Hierarchy of International Violence and Extermination, in order to harness his mental powers to enslave the entire planet in preparation for Brainiac's arrival. Hector managed to free himself from their capture and defeat the Hive Queen with an astral form, before teaming up with her and Superman to defeat another powerful psychic known as Psycho Pirate. Later, Hector was kidnapped from prison once again by the Kroliteans, who also wanted to use him for his power, though Hector was saved by both Superman and Green Lantern this time. Tired of constantly being abducted and used, Hector took control of Superman and tried to use him to commit suicide, but Green Lantern saved him. Green Lantern even recruited Hector, much to Hector's excitement, to join him on a mission in space. Though Hector ended up erasing Green Lantern's memory and tried to kill every villain in the universe, he later helped the Green Lantern Corps defeat another universal police force known as the Dark Stars by disrupting the psionic abilities of their versions of the Guardians, known as the Controllers. After the Green Lantern Corps proved victorious, Hector seemingly disappeared to explore the cosmos. Now, despite being physically inept and immobile, Hector Hammond possesses one of the most powerful minds in the universe. He has both telepathy and telekinesis, allowing him to read and control minds, cast illusions, project an astral form and telekinetic energy blasts, and even telekinetically control and manipulate both matter and energy. And though his body and head are often strapped to a tall chair for support, he is able to levitate himself for movement.
So he's a telekinetic, but that extends beyond just moving objects and manipulating matter. It also extends to manipulating energy and things like creating rock monsters.
Yes, yeah.
I assume he projected his own consciousness into the rock monster.
I don't think so. I was under the impression that he was just animating it with his telekinesis.
Oh, gotcha.
Trying to fool Green Lantern.
Gotcha. He's pretty powerful, but not powerful enough. Now, Modok started out as George Tarleton. George was born in Bangor, Maine, and little is known about his early life, though he grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania and worked as a lowly technician for the evil science organization AIM, which stands for Advanced Idea Mechanics and is an offshoot of Hydra. It was there George fell in love with fellow scientist Monica Rappaccini, one of AIM's top minds. In the organization's unyielding search for power, AIM's extra-dimensional scientists made the slightest and briefest of breaches into the realm of the Beyonders, who are omnipotent beings that exist beyond the reaches of the multiverse, whom you can learn more about in our Dr. Manhattan vs. Molecule Man Duel episode. This dimensional pinprick allowed AIM scientists to harness and store unlimited power within an object called the Cosmic Cube, one of the most powerful weapons in Marvel that can be used to conquer a universe. It was AIM's greatest achievement. However, they didn't entirely understand what they had created. In order to comprehend and analyze the power of the cube and determine how to use it, they needed a computational mind far greater than that of any man or currently existing machine. To that end, they forced one of the technicians on the project, George Tarleton, into undergoing mutagenic and cybernetic experiments in order to increase his brain size and computational power, turning George into the super-intelligent Modok, which stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. His now massive cranium was way too large for his body. He became essentially a giant head with arms and legs. So Modok was placed into a hover chair that could support his frame and allow him to move about AIM's facility. With his new great intellect came great ambition, and Modok deduced that only he was mentally capable enough to run AIM. Changing his moniker's acronym to Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing, Modok weaponized his chair, calling it the Doomsday Chair, and slew his former superiors, taking over the villainous AIM organization.
I didn't realize it was a chair. I thought it was just like a body harness. Or I guess a helmet.
Yeah, it's like a helmet, chair, body harness. It's all three of those things.
Okay.
Modok's former flame, Monica Rappaccini, hated what he had become and what he did. She escaped his coup and formed her own secret cell of AIM outside of Modok's control. As Modok plotted to overthrow humanity from an AIM submarine, Captain America found and confronted him. During Cap's and Modok's battle, AIM scientists turned on their new leader, unhappy with his management. In response, Modok activated the submarine's self-destruct sequence, leaving Cap and the vessel scientists only moments to escape. Though Modok was suspected to be dead, he survived by using a force field. Reassuming control, Modok was hellbent on using the Cosmic Cube for revenge, but learned that the Red Skull had stolen AIM's prized weapon, which you can learn more about in our Ra's al Ghul vs. Red Skull episode. Enraged, Modok hatched a series of world's domination plans, but was stopped by heroes such as the Submariner, Vision, Captain Marvel, Iron Man, and the Hulk, the last of whom Modok used a device on called a cathexis ray generator to siphon and transfer the Hulk's radiant energy. Eventually, AIM became dissatisfied with Modok's short-sighted and obsessive agenda of getting revenge on Earth's heroes, and they attempted to oust him as leader by hiring a group of assassins called the Serpent Society to kill him. The assassins were successful and Modok was defeated, with AIM using his lifeless brain as an organic supercomputer to assist their experiments. Eventually, however, they came to realize they couldn't recreate a perfect cosmic cube as they had done before, so they revived Modok and he assumed control of AIM once again. It turned out, however, that the mutagenic process that created Modok was unstable, and his body began breaking down. He attempted to repair his physiology by interfacing with a special G-Tac sequencer device, though AIM turned on him in his weakened state and rigged the device to explode. Captain Marvel flew Modok into space before it detonated, and he was hurled into orbit. In his absence, Monica Rappaccini took control of AIM. Modok eventually returned and usurped control of AIM again. He used the cathexis ray generator to expose hundreds of people to gamma radiation, creating an army of Hulk-like creatures. One subject, however, Bruce Banner's ally Amadeus Cho, did not transform into a Hulk and instead grew an expanded, mutated mind with reality-warping powers. Cho used his new power on Modok to undo the mutagenic experiments that were done on him, reverting Modok back into George Tarleton. As an ordinary man again, George was imprisoned by the US military, though he had no recollection of his time as Modok.
Oh man.
But Modok had a contingency for an occurrence like this, and had a cluster of cloned brains on standby to resume his plans should he ever die. Most of the brains were destroyed in a battle with the Red Hulk, but one survived and reformed a new body identical in appearance to the original Modok. He eventually retook control of AIM again, and later commandeered the giant robot called Ultimo, becoming Ultimodok, wherein he kind of looked normal as a proportionate head on a gargantuan robot body. But he was subsequently defeated by the ForceWorks team members War Machine and Quake. Recently, Modok began having hallucinations of his time as George Tarleton with a wife and family. Under the belief that he was malfunctioning, Modok set out to find a way to repair himself by investigating George Tarleton's past. He ended up reuniting with his estranged father, Alvin Tarleton, who it turned out was one of the founding members of AIM. It was revealed that Modok's hallucinations were actually memories, and that Alvin had forced George into undergoing the Modok transformation process all those years ago. Modok ended up trapping his father's consciousness in revenge. And that's his history. Abilities-wise, Modok's greatest weapon is his brain. His vast mental abilities of enhanced pattern recognition, logical structuring, and enhanced intuition result in a borderline precognitive strategic thinking that lets him calculate his opponent's next steps with uncanny accuracy. He also wears a mental headband designed by AIM that can focus his mental might for a variety of psychic effects, including energy beams, telekinesis, telekinetic force fields, mind reading, and mind control. His Doomsday Chair is equipped with a plethora of tech-based weapons, including lasers, missiles, tentacle grabbers, buzzsaws, and more.
Which Hector Hammond is going to have no problem taking control of. He takes control of Hal Jordan's Green Lantern ring all the time. I also forgot to mention that Hector Hammond is clairvoyant, so he gets glimpses of the future.
I mean, it seems like they're fairly comparable. Hector Hammond is certainly more psychically impressive, but Modok is more technologically impressive. I don't think Hector Hammond will be able to take over Modok's gear because Modok is a much more powerful mind than Hal Jordan.
We'll see. Now that we've got their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not the speculation, but it's fun to imagine how this fight could play out.
We don't set any rules for this match, other than the characters don't know anything about each other going in, except that the other character is a threat that needs to be put down. And we say they start off about 50 meters apart in an environment that has no bearing on the match itself because we don't take stats for the environment.
Plus, certain characters have advantages in some environments over others, and we want these characters to win on their own merit. So let's get into it. The characters meet on the battlefield. Who goes first? I'm not gonna lie, Hector doesn't really move, so Modok would probably go first.
Yeah, I think so. And plus, Modok's kind of a spitfire, you know? So Modok is going to start off by firing off 4 missiles from his Doomsday Chair, and they're heat-seeking missiles that just lock onto Hector and blow him up.
Okay, but Hector's gonna see these missiles coming, and he's gonna cause them to collide into each other, like halfway in between them, okay? And then he's gonna take all of the shrapnel, and he's just gonna compress that telekinetically into a shiv that he just sends flying at Modok.
The shrapnel from the missiles?
Yeah.
Okay, but Modok sees this shrapnel flying at him, and he erects this energy force field around him that stops the blade from hitting him. Then he's gonna blast forward with his chair's rockets, rocketing forward at Hector, just laser guns blazing. His Doomsday Chair drew like 5 laser guns that are all just perforating Hector Hammond.
Alright, but all of those lasers are gonna freeze midair just as they're about to reach Hector because he can manipulate energy telekinetically. So then he's gonna take the energy and just merge all of it together, and he's gonna create this like giant boxing glove construct that he just mentally hurls right at Modok, laser punching him right in the face.
Oh, he's gonna create an energy construct kind of like his nemesis, Green Lantern.
Exactly, yeah.
Except Modok calculates this attack happening as the energy construct is forming, kind of like his own danger sense. And he teleports his Doomsday Chair out of the way, disappearing from the path of the boxing glove and reappearing behind Hector Hammond, and then gassing him with this like corrosive chemical gas that just dissolves Hector's body and skin and turning him into this skeleton, like a skeleton with like this big ass skull.
Alright, so Hector Hammond's dead on the ground.
Yeah.
Just a skeleton.
Yep.
Modok's probably, celebrating his victory.
Yep.
Until Hector Hammond telekinetically just slams Modok repeatedly into the ground. The skeleton thing was a psychic illusion. Hector knew Modok's attack was coming because he read his mind, and he shut down Modok's gas emitters before they could fire. The gas was never expelled. It was all in Modok's mind, and now he's getting pummeled into the ground.
And he shut down Modok's gas emitters how?
Telekinesis. He has a degree of technopathy.
All right, so he may have casted this illusion and he's slamming Modok, but Modok's going to send out like this mental probe that reveals the truth, that it was an illusion. And then he's going to like project this gravitational field around himself that prevents him from being slammed and just kind of holds him in place.
Okay, so Hector is, he's probably fighting against that gravitational field, still trying to move Modok, but as he's doing that, Hector is going to invade Modok's mind, erasing his memory and cognitive abilities. They're all gone.
I'm going to say that regardless, even if Modok's mind was erased, the Doomsday Chair likely has a memory data backup.
He has like an external hard drive on there?
Exactly. So Modok's like a vegetable, but then the failsafe re-uploads that memory data, and Modok's back in like almost no time. Enraged, he's going to shoot out this huge, wide, massive mental energy blast from his headband that just atomizes Hector Hammond.
No, because Hector actually counters with his own mental energy blast, and the two have like this psychic tug of war of sorts, and they're just like fighting over who has like the greater telekinetic energy.
And with these two like energy beams like colliding against each other, it's gonna build up into this like massive psychic energy explosion that just like blasts the two villains apart from each other. Except now, due to the nature of the psychic energy, their minds are swapped.
What?
So now Modok's mind is in Hector's body and Hector's mind is in Modok's body.
What is this, Freaky Friday?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then while Hector is in Modok's body, he's just gonna activate the Doomsday Chair's self-destruct sequence.
Oh shit.
And then he's just gonna eject his mind from Modok's body in like a mentally projected astral form.
Alright, I didn't see that coming. So Modok's gonna see that and flip out, like witnessing this from Hector's immobile body.
Right.
And as the Doomsday Chair's self-destruct sequence is about to hit 0, Modok is just going to telekinetically freeze the Doomsday Chair's like tech components using Hector's telekinesis and like minor technopathy.
Right.
So it's gonna kind of like pause time around the Doomsday Chair, and then Modok's gonna shoot his brain from Hector's body back into his own body and abort the sequence before the chair blows up.
Okay, well, while he's doing that, Hector's own consciousness is gonna re-enter his own body.
All right, so they're back in their own bodies, and Modok's just had it with all this. He recognizes, since he was in Hector Hammond's body, that Hector Hammond is essentially just lifeless, almost. He's completely immobile, apart from his powerful brain. So Modok is going to get a read on like the vibrational frequency of Hector Hammond's chair that he levitates in, and he's going to like emit this like subsonic pulse that's just going to like deconstruct the molecular stability of Hector's chair, turning it into liquid.
What?
Yeah. So Hector no longer has the chair, and he's just gonna fall from the air. And Hector's head is so big, he's definitely gonna fall down head first.
Right.
Is what I'm saying. Just slamming his head on the floor, like cracking it open.
Not gonna lie, that's actually kind of hilarious. I don't know why. Okay, so while he's on the ground, Hector's gonna peer into Modok's mind, and he's gonna see memories of Modok's family. So Hector's gonna create an illusion of those family members, and while Modok is distracted, he's gonna telekinetically just dismantle the Doomsday Chair, just piece by piece, disassemble it. And so Modok's gonna fall onto the ground, landing on his face.
So they're both without their chairs,
Exactly.
just laying on the floor with their big ass heads. Hector probably with a cracked skull, and Modok probably with like a broken nose. And Modok's gonna be like kicking and punching at the air, flailing in an attempt to get himself like upright. Just like, eh!
Hector can't really do that. He's probably just drooling.
Okay, so Modok has the advantage there. He's gonna like roll his head over toward Hector and like swing his stubby arms and legs, just beating the shit out of Hector Hammond's face.
Okay, but as Hector sees Modok like trying to roll over towards him, he's just gonna like telekinetically pull Modok right towards him into his mouth. And he's just gonna bite his face, just sink his teeth right into his cheekbone.
There's no biting in this.
Oh, there is.
like zombie Hector Hammond, just like biting a piece of flesh out of his face.
That's all I could do.
Well, Modok's gonna be like, what the hell? And he's gonna telekinetically reach out to his broken doomsday chair, and one of those pieces from his broken doomsday chair is gonna be one of his buzzsaws that he sometimes uses. So he's gonna mentally pull this buzzsaw over and spin it real fast, and just freaking give Hector Hammond a straight up lobotomy.
What?
Just saw his forehead right off.
Dang.
KO. Match over.
Except that Hector managed, as he was biting Modok, to telepathically project this like mirror illusion. So Modok thought he was taking the blade to Hector, but really he was lobotomizing himself.
Holy shit. I don't know how that's possible. I don't even know how that works. I don't even believe it happened. I think Hector is lobotomized, and this match is over.
That's what Hector wants you to think.
Well, let's end the match there. We'll find out who got lobotomized after we find out the winner of this match by running their statistics in 1,000 simulations. Let's get to it. We'll be back with the winner. All right, both of these guys had some pretty impressive statistics in certain categories, especially intelligence and perception. These guys are almost off the charts because they both have a bit of clairvoyance to them. Obviously, they could read minds. They can telepathically manipulate people. They're huge threats in that regard.
They also both scored pretty high when it came to range, evasiveness, and damage.
Yeah, evasiveness was kind of a surprise for me. I thought Hector was actually going to score low there, but the whole thing is that Hector, he doesn't move during his fights, but he is able to evade being hurt through his ability to erect force fields, his ability to cast illusions. He's extremely evasive, despite being immobile.
Yeah, that was a surprise too. That said, he's incredibly fragile, and his durability stat was probably the lowest we've ever given a character, along with his fighting stat. Actually, Modok scored pretty low there as well.
Yeah, neither of them are like hand-to-hand fighters, but at least Modok can throw a punch. Modok also had a lot of versatility, given that he has so many gadgets within his Doomsday Chair, in addition to, the standard psychic powers.
Although we figured that due to his incredible psychic strength, Hector was slightly stronger than Modok.
Yeah, you don't see Modok like projecting his consciousness out into space. I'm pretty certain that Hector is psychically stronger than Modok.
So taking all of these stats into account, I have the results here, but who do you think came out on top?
I think Modok is going to take this one primarily because he has so many more tricks up his sleeve. He has a lot of the same psychic abilities that Hector Hammond did, perhaps to a slightly lesser extent, but he also has so much more going for him technology and weapons-wise. So I'm saying Modok, and our listeners agree, with about 78% of our poll takers agreeing with me.
I'm just going to chalk that up to everyone hating the Green Lantern film. No one liked Hector Hammond. He was gross in that movie. He's kind of gross in the comic book too. But, this all comes down to whether or not Hector Hammond's mental abilities can compensate for his lack of physicality. So according to the simulations, the winner of the matchup between Hector Hammond and Modok is Modok.
Hell yeah, it is.
In one of our most lopsided victories ever on this podcast.
Oh, really?
Modok won 87.6% of the matches, leaving Hector Hammond with a paltry 12.4% win rate.
Dang. Yeah, it's because Modok has so much more going for him, right?
Yeah, that was the biggest difference between the two characters. It was versatility, and speed actually was another big one. And actually durability as well.
Yeah, because I've seen Modok take a punch from like people like the Hulk and Captain Marvel, and it absolutely, obviously makes sense that Modok would be faster considering that, Hector Hammond can't even move. So this was just an absolute beatdown.
Unfortunately, when it came to the physical stats, Hector Hammond just didn't have it, and those are important in a physical match between the characters.
So is it humbling going into a matchup so overconfident in the beginning and then learning that you just got totally annihilated?
I'm not going to lie, it's kind of embarrassing. It's kind of like I brought Stephen Hawking to a matchup against RoboCop or something like that. I don't know.
That's a great analogy.
I guess ultimately I'm not too upset just because Hector Hammond kind of a weird character.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of feel bad for him sometimes, but then he really just dials up the creepo factor to like 11, and you're like, ugh, gross.
I'm not going to lie, it's kind of hard to look at Hector Hammond. Modok himself is one ugly dude, But Hector Hammond is like a notch up there on the fugly scale.
Wow, way to be shallow. He is not an animal. He is a man.
Touche.
But that does it for this duel. Let us know what you thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And also on our site, you can find a link to our Patreon page where we offer bonus content, including our new watch-along parties and pin sets. Again, this month, June 2021, we're giving out the Punisher versus Red Hood pin set to the patrons for those tiers. Don't miss out, guys. These are limited edition pin sets. Jonathan and I won't be making any more once we run out.
To sign up, visit patreon.com/dynamicduel.
Remember, we're at 40 patrons. Once we hit 50, Jonathan and I will be doing a monthly bonus episode top 10 list. So let's get to 50 by the time we hit our next episode, guys. Sign up and get more from this show.
In next week's episode, we will be reviewing the Hulu original show, Modok.
Right, and Hulu is sponsoring this show currently, but by the time next week rolls around, that campaign will have ended.
That does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, John Speas, Zachary Hepburn, and John Bechinina for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away.
True believers.